The courtroom in Dallas smelled like polished wood, paper, and old air conditioning. It was the kind of room built to make people feel smaller than they were. I sat at the far end of the table in a gray suit I'd owned for 10 years, hands folded, eyes forward. Across from me sat my wife, Claire. She looked rested, composed, the kind of calm that comes when someone thinks the outcome has already been decided. Beside her was Marcus Hale, the attorney she'd hired 3 weeks after filing. Expensive watch, white teeth, voice meant to be heard even when he pretended to whisper. Claire leaned toward him, and the two of them shared a quiet laugh. Then Marcus looked directly at me. He smiled the way men do when they mistake arrogance for intelligence. "This should be wrapped up fast," he said, loud enough for half the room to hear. "I doubt he'll understand what happened until it's over." Claire covered a grin with the back of her hand. I said nothing. There are moments in life when silence is weakness. This wasn't one of them. I had learned over the previous 6 months that speaking too early only helps the person lying. Claire lived in words now. Explanations, excuses, polished stories, carefully arranged versions of reality. Every time I challenged one, she simply built another. So I stopped challenging. I watched. The judge entered a minute later. Everyone stood. Chairs moved, papers shifted, voices died. He was an older man with silver hair and a habit of reading everything twice. He took his seat, adjusted his glasses, and opened the file in front of him. At first, nothing changed. Then it did. His hand paused on the page. His eyes narrowed. He looked down again, slower this time, like something inside the paperwork did not belong there. Marcus noticed it first. His posture stiffened. Claire glanced between them, confused. The judge lifted his head toward the clerk. "Before we proceed," he never finished the sentence. The courtroom doors opened behind us. Every head turned. 2 federal agents stepped inside in dark suits, badges visible at the waist. They moved with the kind of calm that doesn't need attention because it automatically gets it. The room lost all sound. Marcus stood halfway, then sat back down. Claire's face drained so quickly it looked painful. One of the agents approached the bench and handed over a folder. The judge read the first page, then nodded once. When he looked back toward our tables, his expression had changed entirely. This was no longer a divorce hearing. This was something else. Claire whispered, "Marcus." He didn't answer. For the first time since she filed against me, she looked uncertain. For the first time in months, I didn't. There was no going back after that. Before Dallas, before lawyers, before agents stepping through courtroom doors, we had what most people would have called a normal life in Phoenix. Nothing flashy, nothing dramatic. A stucco house in a clean subdivision, 2 cars with payments almost finished, and routines that looked solid from the outside. I worked as a network technician for a regional contractor. Hospitals, schools, office buildings. I handled cable runs, server closets, switch replacements, the quiet infrastructure nobody notices until it fails. It was steady work, honest work. I liked solving problems that had clear causes. Claire was different. She worked at a consulting firm downtown, the kind of place filled with glass walls, strategic language, and people who spoke about urgency as if it were a personality trait. She was sharp, organized, and ambitious in a way I admired when we were younger. She could enter a room of strangers and leave with 3 contacts and an invitation. In the early years, we balanced each other. I handled practical things: repairs, taxes, schedules, keeping life moving. Claire handled momentum: vacations, plans, dinners with friends, ideas about where we'd be in 5 years. She liked motion. I liked structure. For a while, it worked. Weeknights were simple. I got home first, changed clothes, started dinner. She arrived later, heels in one hand, laptop in the other, talking before the front door fully closed. We'd eat at the kitchen island and compare days. Mine usually involved outages, equipment delays, or a stubborn subcontractor. Hers involved clients, presentations, and office politics. Once a year we traveled somewhere warm. San Diego one spring, Santa Fe another year, Florida once, where she talked for hours about waterfront condos we'd never buy. We took pictures, laughed easily, and returned home believing we were building something durable. Then the pace changed. At first it was subtle enough to excuse. New clothes appeared in the closet with tags still attached. Better brands. Sharper cuts. Dresses that seemed designed for places I'd never been invited to. She said appearances mattered more now because senior leadership had started noticing her. Then came later nights. Then networking dinners. Then weekend conferences. Then names I'd never heard before spoken casually, as if I should already know them. I noticed all of it, but I explained it away one piece at a time. Career growth. Pressure. Stress. Opportunity. Adults adapt, I told myself. Marriage changes shape. What I didn't understand was that some changes are adjustments. Others are exits already in progress. By the time I recognized the difference, Claire had been leaving for months. One evening I realized I had stopped believing anything Claire said. The change was quiet, almost boring, but it was final. She came home carrying takeout and talking about a delayed meeting downtown. While she spoke, I saw a printed boarding pass half exposed from her purse. The destination was Denver. She noticed my eyes drift toward it and folded the paper without missing a sentence. That was the moment I understood how practiced she had become. I did not confront her. I asked whether she wanted tea. If you've made it this far, this story clearly caught your attention. If you're enjoying it, drop a like on the video. It helps me see what kind of stories you want more of next. Let's keep going. She smiled with visible relief and said she was exhausted. Then she showered, left her phone charging in the bedroom, and talked through the bathroom door about a difficult client who never seemed to exist in any detail. Names changed. Dates shifted. Stories bent just enough to stay standing. The next morning, I checked our shared card account before work. There was a charge from a restaurant in Scottsdale known for tasting menus and valet parking. She had told me she ate sandwiches at her desk. The bill was for 2 people, plus wine. Still, there was no dramatic explosion in me. No shattered plate. No speech rehearsed in the mirror. No late-night accusation waiting at the kitchen table. What I felt instead was something colder and far more useful. Pattern. I began replaying months of ordinary moments through a different lens. Her sudden gym membership that never produced sweat clothes. Her conferences that returned with no brochures, no stories, no complaints about airports. The way she now kept her purse beside the bed instead of on the hallway bench. The passwords changed. The laughter changed. Even the apologies changed, becoming smoother and quicker. Small things simply stopped looking small. At work, I terminated faulty cables, replaced damaged ports, and documented every irregularity before it became an outage. Marriage, I realized, was no different. Ignore enough warning signs, and the system fails while everyone pretends surprise. That evening, Claire said she would be in Tucson overnight. She kissed my cheek on the way out and told me not to wait up. After she left, I checked the family location app she thought I never used. Her phone was in Miami. I sat in the dark kitchen for a long time, not because I was heartbroken, but because the truth had finally become measurable. Once something can be measured, it can be handled. Once it can be handled, it loses the power to confuse you. When Claire returned 2 days later with airport coffee in her hand and desert dust on her suitcase wheels, I opened the door, stepped aside, and welcomed her home. I stopped asking Claire questions after that week. Not because I surrendered, and not because I accepted anything she was doing. I stopped because questions had become a service I was providing to her lies. Every answer gave her another chance to rehearse, adjust, and smooth over details that no longer mattered. Silence removed the stage. When she said she had a board dinner, I nodded and returned to my laptop. When she claimed a client emergency, I wished her luck and kept reading. When she apologized for being distant, I told her I understood. She mistook calm for weakness. People often do when they depend on noise to stay in control. Inside, something had already broken free. For months I had treated the marriage like a damaged system that could be repaired if I found the right cable, the right reset, the right patient sequence of steps. But marriage is not hardware. If one side is corrupting the signal on purpose, no amount of maintenance restores it. I stopped trying to save what she was actively spending. The change in me was invisible at first. I slept better. I ate on schedule. I stopped checking the driveway every time headlights passed. I returned to the gym I had neglected and lifted with the steady focus of a man moving weight he could actually measure. At work, I volunteered for longer installations and overtime routes. Structure felt clean. At home, I became polite. Claire noticed it and misread it immediately. "You seem different," she said one night while opening mail at the counter. "Probably tired," I answered. She studied me, waiting for jealousy, suspicion, some familiar reaction she could classify and manage. When none came, she looked almost disappointed. That was when I understood another truth. Conflict had become part of her routine. My pain reassured her that she still mattered here. My confusion confirmed she was ahead of me. By stepping out of the argument, I had taken away something she used. I began separating practical things quietly. Copies of statements, password updates on accounts in my name, an inventory of property, tax returns scanned to a private drive, dates written in a notebook beside my bed. Nothing dramatic, just order replacing assumption. The decision had already been made, though I had not spoken it aloud. Move forward quietly. Move forward precisely. When Claire kissed me goodbye the next morning and told me she loved me, I smiled the same way I might smile at a stranger holding an elevator door. Polite, brief, entirely without investment. She left believing she still had time. I had already moved beyond asking for anything at all. I started collecting facts the same way I handled network failures, quietly, methodically, without announcing there was a problem until I understood where it began. Emotion was useless now. Records were better. The first thing I downloaded was 12 months of credit card statements. I printed them at work during lunch, fed pages into the copier, and carried them home in a plain folder marked vendor invoices. Claire never opened anything that looked ordinary. At the kitchen table, I highlighted charges by date, city, and pattern. Hotel stays in Miami on weekdays she claimed to be in Phoenix. Restaurant tabs in Dallas while she said she was trapped in conference calls. Rideshare receipts ending near waterfront addresses. 2 airline upgrades she never mentioned. None of it proved everything, but together it formed shape. Then I noticed the transfers. Every second Friday, small amounts moved from a joint account into a business account with an unfamiliar name, Sandwell Logistics Group. The numbers were modest enough to avoid attention. 900 here, 1,200 there, 1,500 twice in 1 month. Hidden inside normal household movement, they looked forgettable. I searched Arizona corporate records that night. Nothing. No registration. No tax listing. No active license. No dissolved entity. It was a company that existed only where money could disappear. That interested me more than the affair. I checked Claire's expense reimbursements next. We had once shared passwords for convenience. She had changed many of them, but not all. Several reimbursements from her consulting firm match dates where our cards also paid personal meals, luxury stays, and boutique shopping. The same weekends were being funded twice. I began keeping a ledger in a black notebook. Date, claim, actual charge, location, notes, simple lines, no commentary. Claire moved through the house unaware. She discussed office politics while loading the dishwasher. She asked whether I wanted to visit friends in summer. She stood beside me brushing her teeth while I mentally matched her lies to timestamps. One Thursday, she said she would be late because leadership was reviewing budgets. At 8:40 p.m., our card paid for champagne at a rooftop bar in Miami. She came home after midnight carrying a laptop bag and irritation. Long night, she said. I'm sure, I answered. She kissed my forehead like I was a relative in a hospital bed. By then I had stopped feeling insulted. I felt alert. When people believe they are unseen, they become careless. Claire was not hiding anymore. She was repeating, and repetition is what turns suspicion into evidence. By the end of that month, the folder no longer fit in a drawer. Neither did the truth. I met Rachel Dunn on a Tuesday morning in a quiet office above a title company in Phoenix. No dramatic lobby, no polished marble, no slogans on the wall. Just framed licenses, organized shelves, and the kind of silence created by people who bill by the hour and prefer facts over speeches. She listened without interrupting while I laid out the folder. Statements, transfers, flight records, expense reimbursements, copies of hotel charges. My black notebook with dates and notes written in block letters. When I finished, she stacked everything into neat piles and asked only one question. Do you want revenge, or do you want resolution? Resolution, I said. She nodded once, as if that answer decided whether she would take the case. Rachel brought in a forensic accountant named Leonard Price 2 days later. Gray suit, careful eyes, voice so low it made everyone else speak softer. He spent 3 hours reviewing transfers to Sandwell Logistics Group, then asked for every tax return we had filed in 5 years. I sent them before sunrise the next morning. By the end of that week, Leonard called me back. This is larger than domestic misconduct, he said. Your wife appears to be moving personal expenses through client reimbursements, then redirecting company funds through a shell vendor. If the source accounts are corporate, this becomes fraud exposure. I leaned back in my chair and looked at the ceiling fan turning above me. Until then, Claire had still existed in two categories inside my head: dishonest wife and confused professional making reckless choices. Leonard removed the second category completely. Rachel requested additional subpoenas through preliminary filings. Bank records widened the picture fast. Sandwell Logistics had no employees, no office lease, no website, no tax activity. The receiving account traced to a trust linked to Claire and another signer whose name was initially redacted. Marcus Hale, her attorney, the same man she later hired for divorce proceedings, had been connected to transfers months before filing. That was the moment the case stopped being personal. Marriage could explain betrayal. It could not explain coordinated financial concealment. Rachel remained calm. We proceed carefully. Civil first. If external counsel or corporate compliance escalates, that is their decision, not ours. I understood what she meant. Once certain doors open, nobody controls who walks through them. Claire came home that evening carrying flowers for the kitchen and asked whether I wanted to visit Dallas with her sometime for a conference weekend. I told her maybe. Then I watched her place tulips in water with the same hands that had been signing false reimbursements. What began as a divorce was now moving into another category entirely. Claire called me the night before the Dallas hearing. It was the first time in weeks she had chosen my number instead of sending messages through Marcus or forwarding notices written in language designed to sound neutral while carrying threats underneath. I let the phone ring 4 times before answering. Her voice arrived soft, controlled, almost familiar. "Ethan, thank you for picking up." I said nothing. There was a pause on the line, the kind that appears when someone expects emotion and finds empty space instead. Then she tried again. "We don't have to do tomorrow like this." Outside, traffic moved below my apartment window. A siren passed somewhere far off. I sat at the kitchen table with Rachel's notes beside me and listened to the woman who had spent a year lying now speak about peace. "How exactly is tomorrow being done?" I asked. "You know what I mean," she said quickly. "Lawyers, hearings, public records, all of it. We can still settle privately." Calmly. Calmly. The word nearly made me smile. There had been nothing calm about unexplained withdrawals, hidden flights, shell companies, and months of strategic contempt disguised as marriage. But people often rename the consequences of their actions once consequences arrive. Claire lowered her voice further. "I don't want this to become ugly." "It already did," I said. Another pause. I could hear her breathing now, measured and careful. "Marcus thinks we can resolve everything in an hour if you're reasonable." There it was. Not apology. Not remorse. Positioning. I looked at the clock on the microwave. 9:17 p.m. Somewhere in Dallas, Marcus Hale was likely reviewing numbers, confident that intimidation and paperwork would finish what deception had started. Claire still believed she was calling from the stronger side. "I know you're angry," she continued. "But we were unhappy for a long time." "We?" I asked. She ignored it. "I'm trying to give us both a dignified way out." That sentence told me more than any confession could have. She still thought the story was negotiable. She still thought language could move reality backward. I picked up Rachel's folder, closed it, and stood. "Claire." "Yes." "See you in court." I ended the call before she could answer. The phone rang again immediately. Then again. Then a message notification lit the screen. I turned it face down and went to bed. For the first time in months, I slept deeply. Some conversations end with understanding. Others end when there is nothing left worth explaining. The courtroom in Dallas changed the moment Marcus Hale began speaking. Until then, everything moved according to the script Claire had trusted for months. Papers arranged in clean stacks. Confident posture. Quiet glances between them that suggested I was already finished and simply hadn't been informed yet. Marcus stood, buttoned his jacket, and addressed the judge with the smooth certainty of a man billing by the minute. "Your Honor, this matter is straightforward. We believe equitable terms have been delayed unnecessarily, and my client is prepared to conclude today if opposing counsel intends to cooperate." He said cooperate while looking directly at me. Rachel didn't react. She only uncapped a pen. Marcus continued, outlining assets, timelines, and claims built from the same polished fiction Claire had used at home. Emotional distance. Irreconcilable differences. Financial imbalance. My alleged unwillingness to engage reasonably. Each sentence was delivered with the rhythm of something rehearsed. Then the judge raised a hand. That will be enough for now, Mr. Hale. Marcus stopped mid-stride, smile still half visible. The judge opened the folder recently handed to him by the federal agents. He read one page, then another, then adjusted his glasses and looked over them toward Claire. Mrs. Bennett, he said, voice flat. Were you aware of an active financial investigation involving misappropriated corporate funds, false vendor payments, and interstate transfers connected to entities under your control? Claire didn't answer. The room seemed to contract around her. Marcus turned sharply. Your Honor, I have not been provided. You have now, the judge said. One of the agents stepped forward and placed additional documents on counsel table. I recognized account summaries, transfer maps, reimbursement records, shell registrations, and signatures copied from forms I had first found months earlier. Claire's hands began to shake. Marcus opened the top page, scanned 3 lines, and lost all color. The man who had entered smiling now looked like someone hearing weather reports about his own house. This proceeding is stayed pending coordination with federal authorities, the judge continued. Any representations made to this court may be subject to separate review. Claire whispered, Marcus. He did not look at her. Across the aisle, Rachel wrote a single note on yellow paper and slid it to me. You did well staying quiet. I folded it once and placed it in my pocket. The confidence Claire carried into that room did not collapse dramatically. It drained out of her in stages. Eyes first, then posture, then voice. By the time court recessed, she looked smaller than the chair she sat in. Some lies survive arguments. Very few survive documentation. We signed the new terms that afternoon in a smaller conference room off the main hallway, far from the benches, cameras, and whispered speculation. The federal agents were gone. The judge had recessed. What remained was paperwork, fluorescent lighting, and the exhausted silence that follows impact. Rachel sat beside me with a legal pad and a bottle of water she never opened. Across the table, Claire looked as if she had aged several years between morning and lunch. Her makeup was still careful, but no longer convincing. Marcus had withdrawn from representing her pending review, so another attorney from his firm handled the signatures with the detached expression of a man cleaning up someone else's spill. No raised voices, no speeches, no dramatic accusations finally unleashed. Just numbers changing shape. Claire no longer asked for the house in Phoenix. She no longer argued for maintenance, reimbursement, or accelerated asset division. Several accounts were frozen outright. Others were reserved pending investigation. What she once described as obvious entitlement had become negotiable residue. When the amended settlement packet reached me, Rachel tapped 3 places with her pen. Initial here. Sign there. Date the last page. I read every line anyway. Months earlier I would have signed quickly, desperate to end the tension. Now I understood that endings deserved attention. I checked names, figures, parcel descriptions, release language, liability carve-outs. Then I signed once, then again, then the final page. My handwriting looked steadier than I felt. Claire took longer. Her hand trembled each time the pen touched paper. Once, she stopped and stared at nothing for several seconds before continuing. Nobody rushed her. Consequences move at their own pace. When it was done, the replacement attorney gathered copies into separate folders and announced that filed versions would be transmitted before close of business. That was it. No gavel. No applause. No cinematic justice. Claire stood first. She opened her mouth as if to say something to me, then reconsidered. Whatever sentence she had prepared no longer matched the room. She picked up her bag and walked out without looking back. I waited another minute, collected the ring of house keys Rachel slid toward me, and thanked her for her work. Outside, Dallas heat rose from the pavement in visible waves. Traffic moved. People laughed somewhere across the street. A delivery truck backed into an alley with 3 sharp beeps. I stood there holding the keys. There was no joy in it. No anger either. Only silence after a long stretch of noise. That same day, I drove straight to work. No detour. No celebration lunch. No call to friends. Just the highway out of Dallas, sunlight across the windshield, and a service van that needed an alignment. My phone stayed face down on the passenger seat the entire drive. I had a medical center installation scheduled for 2 in the afternoon. By the time I arrived, The crew was already unloading reels of cable and stacking conduit near the loading dock. The building was half finished. White walls, exposed ceilings, concrete floors still carrying the dust of construction. It smelled like paint, metal, and progress. My foreman looked up when I walked in. "How'd court go?" "It ended," I said. He nodded once and handed me a clipboard. That was enough. I spent the next 6 hours doing ordinary things. Measuring runs, labeling ports, checking rack spacing in an equipment room that ran too warm, correcting a bad termination someone swore was fine, walking hallways with plans rolled under one arm. There was comfort in it. Cables don't lie about where they go. Tools don't pretend to be something else. Systems either function or they fail. If there's damage, you trace it, remove it, rebuild cleanly, and move forward. Life should be more complicated than that. Sometimes it isn't. Around 5:30, I stepped outside to drink coffee from a paper cup beside the van. The sun was lower now, turning the windows of the medical center gold. Traffic moved steadily beyond the lot. Somewhere nearby, a radio played country music through static. I checked my phone for the first time all day. 3 missed calls from unknown numbers. 2 messages from Claire. 1 from Rachel confirming filings were complete. I deleted nothing. I answered nothing. Then I put the phone back in my pocket and returned inside. There were still ceiling drops to finish before morning. People think closure arrives like thunder, loud, obvious, unforgettable. Mine sounded like ladders moving across tile, a drill biting into steel, and technicians asking where I wanted the next line pulled. Life kept moving. Only now, it moved without the old illusions. That's the end of this story. If you made it all the way here, consider subscribing to stay with us. I've placed a couple of recommended videos on screen for you. Pick one and keep watching. I'll see you in the next story.